Good evening, and welcome to the second session of Ask Me Anything. I am doing some testing here with some audio equipment, so if you can hear me, could you please just put a little note in the comment section that you can hear me? Okay, well, it is 7:02 according to my watch, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in. Thank you for joining, and I hope that this ends up being as good of a conversation as we had the last time. Just a brief reminder. Ask Me Anything is your opportunity to ask me anything about flight training, whether you're interested in a maneuver, or having trouble with a concept, or you're just interested in learning more about some topics that are related to aviation. I am more than happy to take any questions that you might have. And my promise is that, well, I can't promise that I'll be able to answer everything live, but I will do my best. And for if I run into a question that I can't answer live, I do promise that I will go out, do some research, and I will get back to you with some answers, and we can go from there. So without any further delay, let me jump in here because I want to start with I want to start with uh, I want to start with a question for you. So, the first question I have is around some celebrations. First of all, has anyone passed their written test recently? Has anyone had their first solo or their first cross country? And if they have, if you could please put it in the comments section, that would be great. And then the last question, and certainly not the least, is has anyone passed a check ride recently? So if you have, please just put a comment in the comment section, and then that way all of us can congratulate you and celebrate with you because these are all huge accomplishments, and we should. So let's see. It says the dog Digman M has said not yet, just working with the Wisconsin weather, and absolutely, yeah. We're here in southeastern Minnesota, and the last few days have been terrible. So, Digman M, I wish you the best, and I hope that the weather clears up soon so that you can get on with your flight training. But thank you for the comment. That's awesome. That is awesome. And if anybody else has any celebrations that they would like to put in as we go through the questions, please feel free to do so. The other thing that I will mention is I do have several questions that people submitted prior to this Ask Me Anything session. But if you have a question that you would like for me to take a shot at, please feel free to put it in the comment section. And like I said, I will do my best to get you an answer, whether live or I'll look it up and get back to you in a bit. So anyway, let's move on to our first question. The first question comes from someone who asked to remain anonymous, and they are concerned about over controlling the airplane. One of the first questions, or what they asked is, they're doing simulated instrument and they're finding it very hard. They're trying to balance just what the aircraft needs to remain where you want it versus anticipating corrections for turbulent conditions or staying ahead of the airplane. The harder they try, the worse they do. So when they're flying solo, they don't seem to have as many issues. And their question is, are they overthinking this, or how do they let go and just fly the airplane? And I'm going to start with a little bit of a little bit of a hedge. Not having flown with you, anonymous, I can't really suggest anything specific. However, what I would like to offer as suggestions is there's a couple of things that I notice when I'm flying with instrument students that happen regularly that do make the airplane a little bit harder to control. So the first is when we were private pilot candidates, or as a private pilot candidate, you may or may not, depending on your instructor, have spent a fair amount of time learning how to trim the airplane. And trimming the airplane is a little bit science and a little bit art. Once you have your airplane relatively trimmed out, if you are flying a Piper product like an Archer or a Cherokee or a Warrior, or a Cessna product like a 172 or a 150, 152, those airplanes trim out very well. And once they're trimmed out, they're pretty solid. And they don't stay exactly where you put them, but they will stay pretty close to where you put them. So that's the first thing that I would recommend is spend some time getting much more comfortable with trimming the airplane. And before you move in and start doing other things like working with the radio and maybe trying to put a flight plan in or adjust a flight plan or whatever the case may be, please um, please make sure that you're trimming the aircraft out. The second thing that I'll mention is, and this still happens to me today, and that is that a lot of times we are controlling the airplane, and we're specifically controlling it probably harder than we did as a private pilot. And what that means is that sometimes you've got your hand on the yoke, whether or the stick, depending on what kind of airplane you're flying, and then you might actually reach over to tune the radio. And when you reach over to tune the radio, you take the airplane with you. Or let's say that you reach down to change an air tank, and you of course take the airplane with you. Or you look over someplace, and again, the airplane at that point tends to move. If you're looking left, it looks left. If you're looking right, the airplane moves right. And that's actually because you're taking the airplane with you. You're moving your hand when you move your body to do that. So I would look out and make sure that you're not taking the airplane with you. And the best way to do that is, if you are going to reach for a radio, put a very light hand on the yoke. And the hand is not there to control the yoke, but it's just to make sure that the yoke doesn't do any sudden movements while you are adjusting the radio. And the other piece, again, same thing when you're reaching for the fuel tanks, when you're reaching for the GPS, when you're doing something, just make sure that you're not taking the airplane with you. Um, the other piece that I would look at is, how is your scan doing? And when we're learning how to fly instruments, we need to, we're used to looking outside, and there's a big natural horizon out there that's very hard to miss. But when we're actually working on our instrument training, a lot of times going from that big outside view to this little six or a couple, depending on whether you're using glass panel or your six pack, it's a very different view. And a lot of times we'll get fixated on one instrument. So let's say you look up and you see, oh my gosh, my airspeed is out of control. So then you'll fixate on the airspeed. And while you're fixated on the airspeed, what happens is the nose, you may start pulling the nose up, and now the nose is higher than the horizon. And so now the airplane's slowing down. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to develop your scan, which the star scan that we usually start with starts with the artificial horizon, and you look at that, and then you'll look at the airspeed indicator for just a second and make sure it's where it needs to be. Then you'll look back to the artificial horizon. Then you'll look at your altitude indicator. Then you'll look back to the horizon. Then you'll look at your vertical airspeed control or vertical airspeed indicator and back to the artificial horizon. Your direction indicator back to the horizon, your turn and bank indicator, and then back to the horizon. And again, you want to spend just a very little bit of time on each of those instruments. And because if you do get stuck on one of those instruments, a lot of times once you get unstuck, you'll find that, ooh, shoot, I'm in a bank, or oh, darn, my nose is higher, my nose is low. So again, focusing on increasing and making your scan more automatic, and making sure you don't get stuck is a, a piece of advice that I will give to a lot of new instrument pilots. Again, there could be other things that are making it difficult for you to control the airplane and keep it where you want to. But those are the top three that we tend to run into. So hopefully one of those helps. If not, please feel free to either, if you're online, please feel free to add a follow-up question to the comment section, or please feel free to resubmit more detail on what you think might be going on as you're flying. The other thing I would ask is, if any of you are instrument pilots right now and you have other ideas about why this person may be struggling to over control the aircraft, please feel free to drop those in the comments section as well. We can all learn from each other, and the more information and advice we have, the faster we'll learn. So anyway, thank you, Anonymous, for answering that question. It looks here like it says Brian Baratsowski, 5352. I hope I got your name right. Says a big hello from CYQT. Thank you for sharing your experience, knowledge, and passion for flying on your YouTube videos. So educational. Two thumbs up. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the comment. I'm very glad that you find these helpful and enjoyable. I enjoy making them. And I enjoy interacting. A really good day for me is a day when I've spent the whole day thinking about nothing but flying. So thank you very much for the comment. Okay, not seeing any other. Oops, and it looks like Eric O2UK also joined. So thank you very much for the join, and thank you very much for the icon. That's awesome. And so what I'm going to do is move to our next question here and see what we can come up with for an answer. Again, this is another anonymous person, and they said that they are wanting to proceed in their training, but they're having trouble finding a job that allows them to continue training and wanting to bring that person on board their company. Are there jobs that relate to aviation that this person can work for while they continue their education, or jobs that are friendly toward your goal to go and become a commercial pilot? This person needs enough to continue paying for their aviation training and supporting their family and bills. So this is a really tough question, but thank you for asking it. I was going to say when I first saw this question, the answer to this, I know you're going to hate this, but the answer to this is it depends. It depends on where you are in the country. It depends on whether you're in a bigger metropolitan area or a smaller area. I think if you are, for example, we're in southeastern Minnesota, and here in Rochester, Minnesota, there are plenty of opportunities that can meet the goals that you're looking for. For example, the Great Plains Aviation, the organization that I work for, we're more than just a flight school. Um, we're actually an aviation services company. So we do ground handling for some of the commercial airlines that come into Rochester International Airport. We do maintenance on airplanes. So if you're mechanically inclined, there are opportunities there. And we do maintenance on both the commercial airlines and general aviation airlines. Um, we actually have, since it's an international airport, we actually have uh, uh, a Delta Airlines subsidiary and an American Airlines subsidiary, and they both are looking for regularly looking for people to help them out with their commercial activities. And so that's an opportunity to find a job at the airport that allows you to be around aviation all day. Not necessarily in a way that gets you in an airplane all the time, but you are making contacts with people who are in the aviation industry, and you'll learn much more about your company and how they recruit for their pilots, etc. And several of Great Plains Aviation's students have actually worked for these companies, and it has allowed them to uh, create professional relationships at the same time that they're bringing in some money and supporting themselves and their flight training. In addition to that, depending if you're at a smaller airport or a smaller community, you can look for similar opportunities, although they might be a little bit harder to find. Again, I would look for positions that are in the aviation industry, because they tend to be very aviation friendly, and they also tend to support their many of them support their employees by providing opportunities to do flight training, or opportunities to get involved with aviation. There are a lot of them in Minnesota. In fact, one of the other um, one of the other things that I was thinking of as I saw this question is, if you work for an aviation related company, say Cirrus Aircraft or Cessna Aircraft, or well, Tektronix, or Textron, then a lot of the times those organizations have flying clubs where you can rent and train for a very reasonable price, which does allow you to further your desire to get through your flight training, while at the same time having a job that can support your family and help you pay the bills. And so again, I think you'll have to do some looking around, but there are various options that should allow you to do what you want to do. So I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that you're either online now or that you get to see this as the replay happens, and that you can drop a note in the comments and let us know how your search goes. And again, I'll reach out to those of you that are online if you do know of something or are in a situation where you're able to do this. Please put that in the comments section so that we can share what other folks know as well, and so that we can kind of share the wealth and get everybody in a position that they'd like to be. So again, thank you for submitting that question. Let's move on to the next question. So this person is also anonymous, and I'm guessing that they're from outside the United States because the question is, "Hello there. This might not be a proper question for a CFI, but here it goes. I would like to ask what would be potentially needed for an EASA or an EU citizen if they wanted to fly or perhaps even earn a rating in the USA. And they're mostly interested in visa rules. So let's say case one, you want to only learn and that's it. Or case two, you would like to get a job also, something simple, not as a pilot, mind you, that would be a bit, or would that be a bit over ambitious? Or is there any difference from that to an ordinary work visa? Or what happens if they want to do both? Does one need some kind of higher level visa? So I'm going to take a shot at this question, but I'm going to preface this by saying that I am not an immigration expert, and I'm certainly not a visa expert. But I did do some brief internet searches, and I did find a little bit of information that I think would be helpful to you. So first of all, if somebody wanted to come to the United States and learn how to fly, I believe that they would need either an M1 or an F1 visa. Now, in order to do that, you would need to find a flight school that is able to sponsor an M1 or an F1 visa, and you would need to apply to that school because then what they would do on your behalf is they would put in an application or they would finish your application and send that to immigration so that you could be considered for that M1 or F1 visa. And again, that would be what you would do if you wanted to come to the United States only to train in aviation. If you want to get a job also, then you really have to get a visa that allows you to work, and that would be like an H-1B or some other larger visa like that. Now, the interesting thing about flight training here in the United States is if you're already in the United States on a valid work visa, then you can do flight training. In fact, we're working with several folks now that are working at a local institution. They're here for their jobs, they do their jobs, but then when they're finished with the workday, they come out and they actually are able to train. Now, one of the things that one of the hurdles that we do have to get over, if there is somebody that wants to train that is not a U.S. citizen, is that we have to have them go through a background check and get permission from the TSA here in the United States before we can actually start that training. Now, the process of getting that permission is actually fairly straightforward. They would go to tsa.gov, they would fill out the form. They actually have to pay a small stipend because the background check will cost some money. Then, once they've filled out that form and submitted it to the TSA comes back after they've verified all the information in the application that's been filled out. Then they will reach out and say, most likely say, "Hey, this looks good. Now we need you to get fingerprinted." And then once the fingerprints have been done, those fingerprints are sent to the FBI, and the FBI does a background check on the individual. Once that background check is completed, then the applicant and the flight school that they notify or that they identified in the application both get notified that permission has been given, and then that person can start their flight training. So again, if even if you're here in the United States a uh, on a work visa, you can do flight instruction while you're here. But once your work visa, or if your work visa expires at that point, then you would need to stop your flight training, and either work with immigration to get another type of visa, or to extend your work visa, or et cetera. Because the TSA training permission only lasts as long as your visa allows you to be within the United States. Um, so that's what you would need to do if you were going to train. If you were going to just fly in the United States, that can be a lot easier. Now, um, I typically, people do not need a visa, or a or educational permission to take an airplane flight here in the United States. And the TSA does allow flight schools to give what we would call discovery flights in the United States, without having to have permission to do the actual training. So if you're interested in just getting in an airplane with an instructor and having a discovery flight, that's actually fairly simple. That's actually just between you and the flight school. However, if that discovery flight leads to the desire to actually do training here in the United States, then again, then you would need to get your TSA training permission. So hopefully that helps answer the question. And again, we would love to see you come here and both train and enjoy aviation in the United States. We've got some beautiful places to fly all over the country, and we would love to have you come and enjoy some of that. So again, if you if you would like to come my I guess my first thought would be to reach out to a flight school, and make a relationship, start a relationship with the flight school, and have them walk you through your specific situation and see how they can help you the most. One of the things that I would like to do, I hope that answers that question well enough, that the person that asked it was able to get some information out of it. I do want to drop over here because it looks like JR90099 asked, would I need a college degree to be a pilot? And the answer to that, I'm going to answer this really quickly, is no. No, you do not need a college degree to be a pilot. Now, it does depend on what you mean by being a pilot. You can do your flight training. In fact, we have several folks right now that are finishing up high school, so they've not even yet begun college, and they're already preparing for their check rides, or in a couple cases, completed their check rides and are private pilots. So they have a pilot certificate, and they can fly anywhere in the continental United States as long as the weather is good enough for them to meet VFR standards. They can actually then go ahead and complete their instrument training as well, without having a college degree or needing to actually go to a college. They can do that, what we call Part 61, with a local flight school. However, if you're looking to be a commercial pilot, like working for Delta, American, United, or FedEx or UPS, then the answer changes a little bit. It used to be that the answer was yes. If you wanted to work for one of the major airlines, or for UPS or FedEx, then you needed to have a college degree. It did not need to be in aviation, but you needed to have a 4-year degree. During COVID, there were a few smaller airlines that actually lightened up their requirements, and so you didn't actually need a college degree to be a first officer. You still needed to have your airline transport pilot a certificate. You still needed to have somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 hours of pilot and command time in order to qualify for those positions. But you could have gotten all of your ratings, Part 61, and then whether you taught, whether you worked for an aerial surveyor, or whether you just owned an airplane and flew for 1,500 hours, you would be eligible at that point in time to apply to be a first officer. As far as I know, Most airlines and many of the big carriers are still requiring a 4-year degree for captain, but there are plenty of opportunities for you to be working as a first officer and at the same time working on your 4-year degree. So hopefully that helps answer the question. And again, the answer specifically kind of depends on whether you're talking about being a professional pilot working for one of the big airlines, or whether you're looking at something smaller, or whether you're looking at working for a private organization, or not working at all, and you just want to become a private pilot and be able to fly yourself and your family around. So hopefully that helps. But thank you very much for the question. That is awesome. Okay, let's move to the next question here. The next question is, again from Anonymous. I'm 16 and I've really gotten into aviation in the past half year. My parents say that getting my private pilot license is a money pit or trap. The idea of scholarships using their awards is that they use their awards to lure winners into buying other products or equipment, and that even if the scholarship covers all the lessons needed for the license, it will cost way more than expected. Is this true? Well, again, this is an interesting and a difficult question. I think it's good that your parents are concerned, and I think that anytime you're looking at something, first of all, aviation is not it's not a cheap endeavor. Um, because of the costs of insurance, because of the costs of airplanes, because of the cost of some of the materials. Aviation is can be quite expensive. So I think they're not wrong from that perspective. However, the idea of scholarships, I think the comment that the idea of scholarships using their awards to lure winners into buying other products or equipment, and that even if the scholarship covers all the lessons needed for the license, that there's some kind of evil intent there. I think that's probably not true. Now, the reason I say probably is because aviation is just like any other industry. There are really good people in aviation, and there are a lot of people who do their best to help everybody get where they want to be in aviation. I know a lot of flight instructors that donate time. I know a lot of flight schools that donate time and money. I know a lot of businesses in the aviation arena that have donated money for scholarships specifically to help people get to their dream of becoming a pilot. And many of those people are doing it for all the right reasons. They see somebody that has a goal. They remember how much they wanted to be in aviation when they were in that situation, and so really they're really trying to help the individuals. Having said that, like I said, aviation is just like every other industry, and there are some bad players as well. And I would love to say that there are no bad flight schools out there, but there are some flight schools that have been accused of kind of rolling in and trapping people into spending more money. Um, I think the majority of flight schools are really there to provide the service. They're really there to help people become the best pilots they can. And to me, there are a couple of things that are really important as you're looking for a flight school or as you're thinking about this. The first is make sure that you investigate uh, any flight school that you're going to get involved with. Go out and meet the people that are part of the flight school. Visit them. Take a discovery flight with them. Chat with some of the instructors if you can. Chat with some of the current students. I know that we encourage at Great Plains. We encourage prospective students to have conversations with existing students so that they can find out whether this is, and at the beginning is the best time to do that. So my first piece of advice would be really go and do your homework on the flight schools that you're thinking that you're going to be part of, and take your time choosing a flight school to try and make sure that you are finding a above board that is concerned about their students and that is dedicated to helping people get to their goals of being a commercial pilot or a private pilot or whatever your goals end up being. The second thing that I would do is I would recommend I would recommend being careful about borrowing money for flight training. There are again now once you're starting to borrow money at this point, you're getting into other industries besides just aviation. And just like everything, there are good players and there are bad players. So I'm not saying don't borrow money for flight training. I'm just saying be very careful about it and make sure that you understand all of the ins and outs and consequences before you put your signature on one of those agreements. Um, and then the last thing that I would say is um, if you're going to become a pilot, if you're going to work on flight training, you need to dedicate time, energy, and focus towards becoming a pilot. One of the ways that I see people wasting money in flight training is they come and they spend a couple of hours at a flight school and then they go away and they might think about aviation, but they're not actually working on the studying that's necessary for them to get their private pilot certificate. So then when they show up a week later, they actually are taking a couple steps back because they've forgotten some of the stuff that they learned in their last lesson. So if you're going to become a pilot, if you're going to be serious about it, focus on it. Fly as often as you can. Make the space between lessons as short as possible because the more consistently you're flying, the more you're in the airplane, and the more opportunities you're taking to study with other people, by yourself, just learning about aviation. The faster your training will happen, and the faster your training happens, the less expensive it will be. When we quote prices at my flight school, we tend to quote them somewhere between $12 and $17,000. And the reason that we say that is because it really does depend on how much time, energy, and focus that person can and is willing to put into flight training. So hopefully that helps. Again, I'm really excited that you're interested in aviation. I think that if you look hard enough and if you take your time and get involved with the aviation community, I think you'll be able to find opportunities um, to do some flight training in a way that will be cost effective. And while it may take a little bit longer, it won't break the bank. And you'll develop some relationships that I think will last for a lifetime. Some other things that you might think about, and it just entered my head as I was thinking, as I was describing this. There are some organizations that can help you learn how to fly for very reasonable prices. The one that comes to mind right now is the Civil Air Patrol. And the Civil Air Patrol is a fantastic organization that focuses around aviation. And for young folks, it's a great opportunity to get involved, to understand and learn more about aviation, to even do some flight training, and do so at a very reasonable cost. And again, the people that are involved, the adult educators, the adult volunteers, they're there to help the young folks that are involved in Civil Air Patrol figure out if aviation is something they want to do, and if so, how far can they go with it. The Civil Air Patrol is related to the Air Force, but it's not obligatory. Meaning, if you're in Civil Air Patrol, that doesn't mean that you have to. As soon as you're old enough, you have to go into the Air Force. In fact, part of what they do is they're trying to get you more knowledgeable about the Air Force to determine if that would be something that you'd be interested in. So hopefully that helps. But anyway, thank you very much for the question. Again, it's a very important question, I'm sure that other people have it as well. Dig, sorry, Digman M says along those lines, what are the best ways to spend your dry time? Flight simulators, ground knowledge, any good book recommendations? I found Stick and Rudder to be very helpful. Yes, I agree with that. Uh, Stick and Rudder is an excellent book. Another book that I find very helpful because he explains it in about everything in about 4 or 5 different ways. Rod Machado has the Private Pilot Handbook, which I regularly go back and review and look at things and look up things and try and make sure that I remember them. So those are good. Jim Collins' Flying the Weather Chart is also a very good book. I think I mentioned that at the last Ask Me Anything. Like most pilots, I'm an amateur meteorologist. And sorry if you are a meteorologist, but like most meteorologists, I am wrong at least half of the time. So I spend as much time as I can trying to learn much more about the weather, much more about the science behind it, in an effort to try and make my predictions and my planning as safe and and accurate as possible. But I found Jim Collins' flying the weather chart to be very, very helpful. Things down into it breaks things down into easy to understand ideas without getting too simple, and it kind of starts off with the basics and then kind of works your way through more of the details as you get further in the book. Um, some other things that I like to do is I've got several videos on this. I like to create scenarios for myself and chair fly those scenarios. So, for example, I may decide, shoot, you know what? I've always wondered what it would take for me to fly from Rochester, Minnesota to Palm Springs, California. So I will sit down with a sectional chart and I will try and create a flight plan that allows me to get from there from Rochester to Palm Springs. I'll try and find ways to get through the mountains without having to go to 14 or 16 or 18,000 feet, because most of the airplanes I fly don't have oxygen. And then I'll do the weather. I'll do all of the planning for that just to keep my hand in. And sometimes, I mean, so I am an instrument rated pilot, so I don't always do the VFR flight planning, but occasionally I will sit down and just by hand plan a VFR flight from point A to point B. Again, just to make sure that I remember how to use the E6B, whether that be the whiz wheel E6B or a digital E6B. To make sure that I understand how to work my way through the questions that are answered, how to make sure that I've got, I've talked about this before in one of my videos, how to make sure that I can gather NW craft, which is an acronym to help you remember all the information you need to know about a destination airport, and how to make sure that I'm using the weather correctly. And these scenarios that I put myself through are actually really nice because even if I'm wrong, even if I do very badly on my flight planning, since it's just a scenario that I'm not flying, I can look at what happened actually with the weather. I can look and see how that might have impacted my actual flight, and I can get that feedback right away without having to put myself in a possibly dangerous situation. So I chair fly or finger fly or think through those flying a lot, especially when the weather is bad. And then the other one is flight simulators. As a private pilot, flight simulators are, I think, a very useful tool, but they become more useful as you become an instrument pilot or as you start working in your commercial or um, multi-engine ratings. Because as a private pilot, where simulators are very useful is in teaching yourself and practicing the procedures. How do I start the airplane? Okay, well, in many of the simulators, you actually have to start the airplane. So walking through those processes. Let's say that I'm struggling with landing. While the simulator doesn't give you the same physical feedback as actually flying the airplane, you do have to actually use the process appropriately. So I use those to help me remember what the process is, especially on some of the non-standard landings, like a short field or a soft field landing. Again, whether you're actually landing short field or soft field is immaterial because the simulator doesn't give you the same feedback. But you can practice that process. Okay, so I'm on my downwind leg. I'm going to pull my power back to 1700, depending on what airplane you're flying. I'm going to add a notch flaps. Everything's looking good. My nose drops a little bit. I'm 45 degrees. I look behind me. 45 degrees behind me is the threshold. Now it's time to turn base. As I turn base, I'm looking for a specific airspeed. What's that airspeed? Okay, I've got that. Now I can add a second notch of flaps. Now I'm looking, I make sure that my final is clear. I make sure that my runway is clear. And now it's time for me to turn final. I'm turning final. Am I high? Am I low? What's my airspeed look like? All of these things are perfectly suited to the simulator. And you can use the controls appropriately, especially if the simulator has a yoke and rudder pedals and a throttle quadrant. You can practice those procedures very well in a simulator. As you get into instrument training, the simulator becomes even more valuable because depending on the level of simulator that you're working with, home simulators are good for practicing the procedures, but you can't actually count an approach in a simulator. But if you go to your flight school and they've got an AATD or an advanced aviation training device, you can actually count that approach as if you were actually in an airplane. And so those are incredibly valuable. And the same things when you're working on your commercial ratings or when you're working on a multi-engine rating. You can actually practice those procedures. In the multi-engine world, you can practice your engine out procedures over and over and over again without having to worry about what happens if you get below VMC, or if you actually do the process wrong, because you can just reset it and start over again. So I find simulators to be incredibly valuable. And in fact, today I ended up doing 2 approaches to make sure that I'm instrument current, because today at Rochester International Airport, it was terrible as far as visibility and weather goes. So anyway, hopefully, Digman M, hopefully that helps. Those are some of the things that I use on downtime. And again, if there are others, if you guys have other ideas, please feel free to put them in the comments section. I know that other people would love to hear what you do on the days when you actually can't get into an airplane. So please feel free to share them. Okay, let's move to the next question. The next question is, for pilots who are returning back to flying after 2 decades, radio communication phraseology is rusty. What's the best way to study and practice this skill to be proficient? Now, I have a couple of thoughts. Um, there are some applications that you can get, such as Plain English, that actually allow you to practice your radio communication on your personal computer. And they actually have mobile apps, so you can do it on an iPad, a phone, a tablet, whatever the case may be. And those are very helpful. So I would recommend doing that. If you're looking for something that's a little that doesn't cost any money, one of the best things that I've done or that I've found for my practice is I will tune in to a local airport using liveatc.net. And I can tune into my local approach and departure. I can tune into my local tower and ground. And so then what I can do is I can both listen to the communications and then think through, okay, would I have done that the same way? Or, wow, I really like the way that person communicated. I'm now going to try and copy them when I'm flying. But the other thing that I often do is, if I hear, so let's say that um, Tower says Archer 12345, turn to heading 050 and descend to 3,000 feet. Those are clearances. So then I can practice responding. I can say uh, Rochester departure, Archer 12345 is descending to 3,000 feet and turning to 050. Um, and so I can actually practice that communication. And actually, I said it wrong. It should be uh, descend or turn to 050, descend to 3,000, Archer 12345, because that way they know that I heard it, and I'm stating my call sign at the end. So even when I get worked up, I'll sometimes goof on the radio. So, but these are good opportunities to pretend that you're somebody else and answer the call, and then you can actually see how that pilot responded to that radio call and figure out, did they do it the same way I did? Did they do it differently? If they did it differently, was my call more appropriate or was their call more appropriate? And so you can use liveatc.net and those types of tools to actually get better at your radio communication. The other one that I often do is, if I'm sitting in an airplane, and even if they're not talking to me, I will try and formulate the answer to what somebody else is being asked. Again, to try and make my radio communication more efficient and to try and make myself sound a little bit better on the radio. So there's a couple of tools. Like I said, Plain English or some tools like that can help you with your radio communication for a cost. And then there are some other free tools like playing along with Live ATC, or if you've got some friends that are still active in the aviation community, something that I found useful is to sit around in a group create scenarios, and then have somebody pretend to be air traffic control, and then you respond back to them how you might respond, and then have everybody joyfully and helpfully and friendly, in a friendly fashion, grade how they believe your radio communication is. It's a great opportunity to have some fun. It's a great opportunity to practice with some friends, and it never hurts to bring food along too. So it's a great opportunity to have some food and fun while you're doing some training. So, and Mike Coffee 1010 says, sure, a lot of things have changed, like back taxi and saying the name of the airport before your call and after. You're absolutely right. And so those things are good things to practice. Again, but and as you as you hear new things, another one is when I was first starting to train, air traffic control used to say things like taxi into position and wait, or taxi into position and hold, and of course. That meant that you were supposed to taxi onto the runway and stay in your position until they actually cleared you. Now they've changed that call to line up and wait, which is means the same thing, but it's slightly different phraseology. So again, I think working through some of those things and using plain English or live ATC are really good ways to practice your radio communication in a place where it doesn't the stakes are lower, and if you make a mistake, it's not catastrophic. And a lot of times I guess I'll correct myself there. I do want to be careful. One of the things that I like doing is I like pointing out when to my students when a professional pilot also makes mistakes. Everybody's human, so nobody's going to be perfect all of the time. The really really talented people that work for air traffic control and some of the really really talented pilots out there, they do wonderful things and they sound great on the radio. But sometimes you're just having a bad day and something comes out of your mouth wrong. And so don't be afraid to make mistakes. You can correct them as long as you're on the ball and paying attention to what you're trying to say. I think in most cases, air traffic control will give you will give you the benefit of the doubt, and I know other pilots will also give you the benefit of the doubt as well. So thank you, Mike, for making that comment. That's excellent, and thank you, Dignamem, uh, for asking the question. And Mr. or Ms. Anonymous, thank you for asking the question as well. So let's move on to the next thing. I actually have some questions for you, and I would love if you would put some answers in the comment section. These can be one-word questions. They can be multiple word questions, whatever the case may be. But here's what I'm wondering from you. Are there tools or products that you would like to learn more about? If there are tools or products that you'd like to learn more about, can you put them in the comments section? I would love to hear. I'm not really running out of video ideas, but I really, really would like to make sure that my videos are hitting home and that they're about topics that you all would like to see about more about. The other thing that I'd like to know that I'm interested in are what are your favorite products? Are there things that you use in the cockpit because you tried them and they really, really helped you out? And if so, can you say what you like about them? I mean, I have some favorites. For example, I am a big ForeFlight user. I started using ForeFlight several years ago, and now I can fly without ForeFlight, but I kind of feel naked without it because it's a huge situational awareness tool, and there are also a lot of really good planning products within ForeFlight. So what are some of the other things that you might use and what do you like about them? And then the last question that I'd like to ask, and you can put them in the comments here, or you can put them in the comments during the replay, is what topics would you like to see in future videos? Would you like to hear more about the weather? Would you like to hear more about aviation math? Would you like to hear more about regulations and things like that? Are there other things that I haven't mentioned or that we haven't covered yet that you'd love to hear? Whatever you'd like to know more about, please feel free to put it in the comment section, and whether it's the live comment section here or the comment section once this post is on the replay, that would be awesome. So I would love to hear from you about that. And with that, I'll pause and see if there are any other questions that are coming up in chat. Anything else anybody would like to know about that we haven't asked yet? Okay. Well, if there is nothing else, I do want to say thank you very, very much for attending the second edition of Ask Me Anything. We will be having another one the last Monday of December. I believe that is the 28th of December, but I will be scheduling something on my channel, and I will be sending out reminders. So if you're interested, be looking for those. Again, I really appreciate all of the questions that have been asked to this up to this point. And if you guys have more questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments section, and I can add them to the screen, and we can I'll try and give you a quick answer, and then we can talk about them during the next Ask Me Anything. Oops. Let's see. What's this? Um, a good pair of zero drop shoes so I can easily feel the rudder versus the brake in the Cessna 172 and ForeFlight. Perfect. Thank you very much. Those are great products. So thank you. Thank you for adding those. And if there are any others, please, again, please feel free to drop them in either this comment section or the replay comment section. So anyway, with that, thank you all again very much. I appreciate your time. I hope this was helpful to you. I really enjoy doing these, so I plan to do them for a while. And please tell your friends and family and any of your pilot colleagues that you think might find this helpful. So anyway, thank you very much. Have a great night. And hopefully the weather here in the upper Midwest clears up so that we can get back out and get in some airplanes and do some flying. Anyway, thank you very much and have a great evening.